Hello and welcome to Start the Beat with Sykes. My name is Sykes and this is my podcast. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank everyone who checked out the last episode. If you're one of those people, I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for coming back. But for everyone else out there, welcome. Feel free to make yourselves at home, and as always, there's beer, soda, water, coffee, tea, kombucha, juice in the fridge, whatever you like. Get yourself something, get comfy. We're here today to have a conversation with somebody that I've never talked to before in my ding-dong life, but that's the power of the internet and having a podcast. That's what we do. So I am sitting here today with a new friend, a patient friend, thankfully. I appreciate that. We'll get into that in a minute because I feel it's really important to hold yourself accountable when you mess things up, and I was a total ding-dong this afternoon, but please make some noise, everyone on the internet, people of planet Earth, for my friend. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. Arron Watson.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be better friends after this.
Yeah. So, the people of the internet are happy that you're here. I'm happy that you're here. Happy Tuesday. How you living?
Life is good, man. The craziness of the last year, if it can't put into perspective how blessed we all are, a lot of people suffering, a lot of people going through tough times. So just walking through each day with some gratitude.
Absolutely. What a nice perspective to have. It's been pretty, interesting over the past couple of weeks now that, we're starting to turn some sort of a curve with, vaccine distribution and things like that. And people are tending to be a little bit more positive when I talk to them. And it seems like all terror aside, I think the past year has done a lot of good for a lot of people that were able to take the time to kind of just be with themselves and focus on what is really important to them. It kind of cut out a lot of the static and the noise, at least for me. I don't know how you feel about that.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, the one of the things I think about is my parents, who are obviously older than me, have been vaccinated, which is just, they were the ones who I was primarily concerned for. And I can remember when we were at the beginning of it, I was reading really smart people being like, vaccines take 5 years to develop. Like, we are not going to be out of the woods anytime soon. And what do you know? It's like a year later, and we've, being in America, like, we have this distribution, and in certain countries they have this distribution of it. But it's also an opportunity to kind of shake free from the stuff you might have been stuck in the past, old habits. They kind of had to die hard when the entire world changed.
It blows my mind that there are some people that are they're questioning the idea of how quick a vaccine was made and everything, living in the time that we live in. Like, your cell phone couldn't do what it could do now 5 years ago. I remember 10 years ago, it would take me 2 days to download one MP3 off the internet. Like, things have evolved, and it's a lot easier to do things a lot quicker thanks to these things in technology and just advancements. And also whenever you're kind of put to it, like, you get put in a really tight situation, you can make some really incredible things happen.
Well, even further, there's an interview with the founder of Moderna, and he's talking about how him and his team had I don't know if formula is the right word, or the specific kind of solution for this mRNA vaccine 2 days after getting it. They received it in, I don't remember exactly, maybe it was February or March of 2020. They had it sequenced and they had their solution ready to go. And then it was the requisite regulatory hurdles to overcome. And I don't actually really want to stray into politics too much, but just to even consider that in the interview I was listening to, he plainly says, like, yeah, that's why I got into this technology. It's because we could turn around a solution in such a short period of time, not for full production, but to just develop something like that. And so, what my hope is that, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. You ever heard the thing like the 4-minute mile? The first time a guy, Bannister, ran the 4-minute mile, and then all these other people immediately ran a 4-minute mile after him because it was proven that it was possible. So this has to be a similar moment for us, just, across the board. Like, there's a lot more that is possible than we're probably giving credit to or acknowledging. And the bar has to be raised, because we're facing problems. People are facing problems at a personal level, at a community level, at a macro level. And we have to have the audacity to say, this can be wildly better, and we have to go for it.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that we're capable of so much just by tapping into the human spirit and really taking advantage of our determination and our focus. And I think that sometimes it's easy to kind of get lost and let that stuff not push you in the way that it can. But whenever, for lack of a better term, when shit gets real, you tend to see things really happen a lot quicker. And I think that that's what we're in right now. So it's super cool to see. It's a bit scary. There's always people that are going to be naysayers of things, but I guess what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's hard to convince other adults about things that they're passionate about, regardless of, whether they're right or wrong or whatever. I don't know. They're adults and they have opinions. So what can you really do about it?
Facts.
So, Arron, who are you? What do you do? Let's get into that for anybody that's just who's this guy that Brian's talking to today, and why he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders. Who is he?
I hope so. So I am born and raised Pittsburgher. I am the CEO and co-founder of a digital media company called Piper Creative. What Piper Creative does is works with other brands, predominantly SMBs and medium-sized businesses, with their digital media. So we get hired to help a company look great on LinkedIn. We get hired to help a company look great on YouTube. We get hired to be a kind of marketing concierge. Sometimes people use a term called a fractional CMO, where someone you think about a lot of SMBs, they've limited marketing budgets, and maybe they have someone on their team with all the spunk and energy, and they don't necessarily have that kind of larger strategic view. We help them just make better decisions. What I saw when I co-founded the company a little over 3 years ago with my co-founder, Hannah, is there was a lot of companies, particularly here in Pittsburgh, although we serve clients elsewhere too, that were just making some really weird choices. They were making weird choices in terms of what to invest in, where to invest in, where their perception of a well-spent marketing budget was versus what was actually effective. And, some of the quintessential examples of that were I was, seeing my own consumption of media outside of live sports, completely gone. And obviously now with the pandemic and streaming, it's just at a completely different level, but wasn't consuming linear TV. If I was watching live sports, I was headed over to Twitter or a group message or somewhere else storing the commercials. And yet there were no major Pittsburgh brands focusing on a YouTube presence, focusing on really having proficiency there. And part of the reason was, if you evaluate the agencies in town, there's some good ones. But, I say this, I'll give talks at different universities around Pittsburgh, and the kids' eyebrows will just, blow out of their forehead. And I'm sure you fall in the same category here. There are 25-year-old marketing agencies who don't have 25 subscribers on YouTube. These are companies with millions of dollars in their annual budget. And obviously, a majority of that is being designated towards the efforts for which they are hired by their clients. But every marketing agency, I would guess, has at least tangentially started to take Google search seriously and the SEO or search engine optimization of their website seriously. And yet YouTube, being the world's second largest search engine, owned by the same company, is just wildly underappreciated. And so you have these other characters out there that are doing something similar to what I described with Piper. We're selling ourselves in some instances as that consigliere, consultant, advisor on where marketing dollars should be spent. And you've got someone like, why, if they can't even take that type of common sense approach for themselves, how are they possibly going to give good advice for their clients? And so that's what we do. It's working. For being 3 years old, for being completely bootstrapped, meaning no outside investors. Neither I nor Hannah have some crazy wealthy uncle or aunt or parent who's funding the whole thing and like a pretend whale of a client. It's a real business with a lot of sweat equity poured into it. But it's working because we were right in that there was a need, and we've been humble and diligent enough to put in the work ourselves as practitioners to be able to drive real insights and results for our clients.
I think that what happens so much with people that own businesses, or maybe somebody like me that's in a band, or you have a podcast, whatever it is, you have some sort of a business. I think it's just like having that focus on thinking about marketing and that perspective of putting yourself outside of your business, like just putting yourself into the shoes of a customer or a potential set of eyeballs that's going to come across your product. I think it's so easy for people to ignore it in a way, or like be very objective in terms of like, what am I trying to sell? How am I going to get it across people's eyeballs? Where are people looking nowadays? And it's so easy to be like, oh, I have a metal band, so all I should do is find heavy metal blogs on the internet that nobody goes on and post links there. But you could really be wild. Like, my band, we've done things like, what do people, they like beer. How about let's make a beer with a brewery, or like, let's make a hot sauce. Let's do things outside of what you would normally do, and it'll help bring in those eyeballs. And like, I think that it's important to have people like you and your company to help give people that insight into like different ways and different places that they can, market their things.
And precisely to that point, there's a truism that you hear from different folks that like work in startups, right? And you've got founders, maybe it's their first rodeo, or they're on to a second or third company. And the truism is, or the aphorism is, first-time founders focus on the product. So in your case, as a metal band, they focus on what type of music are we going to play? What's our look going to be? And like you said, that kind of very self-referential, like what is this thing that we're building? And second-time founders focus on distribution, because they've built something, they've built some great product, and then stood there and, in the field of dreams sense, if you build it, they will come, is almost never true. It's usually you got to get people there, and you got to have a repeatable, sustainable system for getting people there, particularly if you want to build something big. And so what, I spend all my time thinking about, what we as a team focus on, is how do we get butts in seats? How do we amplify our own distribution? Because the success of our business depends on that. And then let's be utterly, transparent and open in sharing the insights that we've gleaned through that hard work, so that other people can also get distribution. Because as a native Pittsburgher, Hannah's a native Pittsburgher, we see, and through my own podcast episodes, like we've seen some fantastic technologists, some fantastic entrepreneurs who are up to really cool stuff, but people just don't know about it. And so if you could solve the storytelling problem, the marketing problem, the distribution problem, there's real economic impact for people. Like the ground truth of that is that is more jobs, that is greater economic security, and all sorts of downstream implications from that. I'm very mission driven in that. I love doing it here in Pittsburgh. And it is, a lesson that I'm still in the process of learning. Like I'm not coming on here, patting myself on the back, telling like, hey, Guru Arron's got all the answers. That's so far from the truth. But the reality is that we have figured some things out. We want to make sure that we share that openly. And we'd really like other Pittsburghers to get it so that, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, I think that it's really important to not underestimate the power of teamwork. And it's really easy, I think, especially for people on my side of the aisle, the artists and the musician types, to really kind of this is my thing and I'm going to do it on my own terms. And this whole you romanticize this idea of not bringing in people to help you do this and that because the system's against us and blah, 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 blah. But I think that there's a lot of just counterproductivity in that. And it's really interesting because so much of what I do, it's almost like if you start talking about, I'm going to put money into marketing and budgeting and bringing in people. It's there's this sort of pseudo selling out sort of thing. But it's how, if you really want this to grow, you need to trust somebody that's really good at what they're doing and put them on your team. You have a really good, you asked, so-and-so to be your guitar player because they're really good at what they do. They have focused on this craft for a really, really long time. It's okay, now you have this really cool album, but you need somebody to help you market it. You don't know anything about album marketing. It's you might want to tell yourself, you don't want to tell yourself that you can't do this on your own. It's really not something that I think a lot of artists like to admit is that they need help. I mean, that's just people in general, right? People are I need help. But I think that it's really important for people to look into ways of reaching out to outside sources to help them, get their stuff out there, because I don't know what I'm doing in terms of marketing. I have no idea.
Right. And you can probably correct me or advise me if this is an off-base metaphor, but Alice Cooper had Shep Gordon, and I watched the Supermensch, documentary, and it was Shep Gordon coming up with these different, PR and marketing stunts, in conjunction with Alice. It wasn't that he was just out there, solely representing the band and, taking them in creative directions that they didn't want to. But, I've used the term consigliere here. It is a pattern that is replicable across different endeavors. And whether it be, a nonprofit trying to change the world, there's a local Pittsburgh nonprofit, 412 Food Rescue, is putting food in people's stomachs who are food insecure. Layla Zarunda is a fantastic marketer. She's one of the better marketers in the city of Pittsburgh. And that's why she's fed so many people. That's why her app is now distributed and she's raised enormous amounts of funding, because she tells a great story about food waste, about the technology needed to help people in need. And, it's a replicable skill set and a replicable kind of playbook to grow whatever it is that you want to grow. And it really then comes down to what's your mission. So if it is your case that there is a mission behind the music, that we have a certain message, we have a certain viewpoint, we have a certain, thing that we want to bring to the world through our art. My business partner, Hannah, is an artist. She's a fine art painter. And you know what? That's a really, really hard career to, turn into anything sort of sustainable. So she's partnered with me. We're building this business. And you know what? As we continue to grow, as we get in office, as we put out more content, as our audience grows, a lot of people are going to see that art that she's painting, and it's kind of the gateway to that. So, I deeply empathize with the artists out there that struggle with that kind of sensibility and that perspective, and I'm always kind of hesitant. I feel like sometimes I'm opinionated. And, that can rub people the wrong way, but it's coming from a place of this is the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is that, the gatekeepers of yesteryear are drastically less powerful. If you want to get into MoMA, sure. Yeah, they're still going to have to do some glad handing in whatever New York City, Manhattan circle. I don't even know how that works, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally.
But the reality is that if you want to make a living selling paintings, I would argue that it has literally never been easier to do that if you put in the work and you buy into the marketing and you see these avenues for distribution.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that is probably the most intimidating for a lot of people, especially not coming from, I guess on my side of the fence, right, would be just the barrier of entry, the cost of marketing. But I think that there's a lot of value in it if you are marketing to the right people. And I think that that's the thing that intimidates a lot of people on the music side of things, because there's no shortage of like music PR companies that you could go online and hire to like, send your album to like a bunch of bullshit blogs and Spotify playlists and things that don't really do anything. And, like you could be a couple grand later, it's like nothing has happened, but you've gotten some numbers. So it's like, how do you turn all that stuff into real growth? Like, where do you know how to put your money? How do you build a relationship with somebody that is like on your side of the fence, that actually not only do they understand how to make your product grow, but like finding somebody that actually cares about your particular product and knows specifically where to put it. Because at least in the music side of things, there are so many people that they don't care. It doesn't matter if they like your band or not. They're just going to email it to the same, they're going to promote it to the same sort of people no matter what. And like developing those relationships and finding somebody has always been my hardest struggle, because anytime I've tried to ever partner with somebody that has like a music focus, it's so easy to tell that they don't really have like an invested interest in me as a creator or my product and really making it skyrocket. They would just be they're more interested in like, well, let's take, the 2,500 for this month or whatever it is. I'll send it out to my blogs and do whatever. And then that's it. It's like, yo, if we actually cared about this, it's like, we could be making this happen monthly and we could all be making more money, but it's like finding somebody that actually cares about your product.
It's really challenging. Yeah, I interviewed Will DeZombach, who's Wiz Khalifa's manager, about the early days, and to get into that position where he is now, a part of Wiz's business. They partner on the kind of different endeavors there. It started as he was an assistant. He was a gopher. He was someone who had to prove his skin in the game before he actually got some real skin in the game. And I think that, there's a reason I referenced Shep Gordon, same thing. This was a manager who had his management fee. And because he was of a level that's a level of skill, he was able to help elevate those acts and, more than returned the value with which he was compensated. And so I think that if I'm thinking about you and your audience of fellow artists who might be coming from that framework, I think that, being rigorous, but recognizing if that is a shortcoming, like part of me and Hannah's Come Together is, something similar. It's not exactly the same, but, I love biz dev. I love sales. I love, I've had 4 pretty big sales calls already this week. And those were like the 4 highlights of my week up until I got to talk to you, Sykes. And, that's what I'm about, because I don't know, that's just however the genetic concoction that came together, that's how I popped out. You got to find that complementary skill set where she's not so interested in that. And we understand that. We have a very kind of clear division of church and state. I'm not picking any of the aesthetic choices about the company. I have very little input on, logos, thumbnails, graphics, all that stuff, because she's obviously exponentially better than me at it. And so, I think that's still the base framework that people should be pursuing, and find someone with that hunger that's not maybe fully seasoned. I don't know this, but you hear these other like super accomplished managers, and they're basically at the point now where you have to be already, level 3, level 4, level 5, and they're trying to elevate you to that kind of very next level. To if they're already that established manager, you're looking for someone who's ready to hustle with you and having the humility to say, okay, we'll go further together. If you're gonna come to an agency, the reason most of our clients come to us, and most of our clients are in the B2B space, so they are selling, legal services or software or some other service that another business needs. And that comes with a relatively high contract value. So they can justify, another example is, a hospital, they say, we need to bring in 500 new patients this year, because between the recurring physical therapy appointments and the insurance and all that stuff, like that is a real revenue driver for us. We can then come in, and what they're paying for is, number one, much easier management. It's not like you're hiring someone full-time who needs to be, kind of managed on a day-to-day basis and handheld. They're hiring us because they know functionally we're going to get from point A to point B effectively and, without issue. And we have an expertise that would take them a while to recruit for. So if you were to kind of articulate that service offering that I said before, someone who has the, practical digital marketing experience and the track record of getting results on YouTube, that's a hard thing to just even find, let alone effectively recruit and hire for into your organization. And there's a speed component to coming to a partner like us, but we're not necessarily going to be the right solution for someone who has a shoestring budget and doesn't quite know what they need, and maybe hasn't even completely built out the business model yet. If you don't have that, way in which you already monetize humming to at least a low degree, then it's really hard for us to come in and throw gasoline when there isn't a flame yet.
Yeah.
Using a perfect metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's just like very, very, I guess that's just the artistic, I don't know what word I'm looking for. I was trying to find a better word than struggle, but it's just like, I guess it's where a lot of things plateau or the ceiling of some sort that like so many people hit, because it's like, maybe you have this really great product, but you just don't know how to market it, how to cut through all the noise, and how to efficiently get to this point where it's like, you've done everything that you can financially or creatively or whatever, but you still need like a little bit more just to get above, to get like, have the means to maybe get somebody on your team that will really help you break you through the ceiling. You just need, I have no idea. But one of the cool things that I've seen is actually on my show, a lot of the younger people that I've had on my show over the past year or two, particularly people in like the hip hop scene, like these will be like kids that are like in their early 20s, maybe even late teens. A lot of them come onto the show and there will be like 4 or 5 kids in this room and they're all together and they have like, none of these, they're all starting off, but one's the talent. One is the manager. One is like the social media person that's just taking videos and photo the whole time. And and there's a couple people that are just like, I don't know if they're doing anything besides just maybe hanging out, but it's like, they have like, they're all there together. Like it's like this unit of people that like are starting from the ground zero up, and they're all working together, which is maybe not too dissimilar from the Wiz Khalifa thing that you were telling me about. And I think that's like what, I've only seen that happen in like the hip hop realm. There's no like rock band that I've ever met that has like just a social media guy and a manager following them around. And it's like, maybe that's something that, we could look into, like people that are in my side of things. But then it's like, well, okay, I'm also in my mid 30s. It's like, how many mid 30 somethings do I know that want to go on this journey with me? Or how many? You've
hit the nail on the head. You've hit the nail on the head there, that the reason those kids are able to do that is because when you're at the beginning and you're just hungry and you have nothing. And when I say nothing, you don't even, maybe you have belief, but you don't really have that ego that builds up over years of, I'm important, I've put in my time, I've done the work, I've done this, that. It's so easy to bring kind of extreme humility, like the kid who joins as a social media manager for a fledgling hip hop act. That requires a kind of baseline humility that's hard to maintain as you age. There's a general desire by the mind to tie itself to that importance. So when I hear that for you, I say, okay, I don't think you're going to find that as a fellow 30-year-old. I don't think that there's going to be that many folks willing to put in the time. But can you, cross a generational border and say, hey, kid in your early 20s who's, into this similar genre, into this similar scene, I'll show you the ropes. I'll tell you all the things that I wish I knew over that course of time. And you help, infuse my brand, my voice, what I've built with a little bit of that younger ethos. There's a degree to that. That's, once again, come back to me and Hannah. Like, Hannah's started the company when she was 21. I was, 27. I'm blanking on the math here, but like, she didn't have all the kind of, business chops from not that I have that many, but there's a micro generational divide there. And, once again, it's back to the people that are hungry. Mm-hmm. Hungry wolves run faster.
I think that, we're tying a couple different parts of this conversation together now in terms of earlier you were talking about what is your story as a business or an artist or whatever. Like, you need to have some sort of a story, which, in order to have a story, that means you're trying to communicate with an audience or communicate with the customer. And so much, especially online, is it's kind of like a youth driven culture. Youth always drives the culture. So if you're, I think it's smart to have people on the team that are maybe in, that 20 something range, where it's like the majority of people that are really looking for what is the new cool thing online. How do you tell your story? Having somebody maybe that is a part of that generation to help you tell that story, or maybe help you just at least pivot your narrative, if we want to get all business talky, into something that's going to help get their attention. Because sometimes I'm very well aware, that maybe my story as being hey, I'm this local artist in his 30s that lives in Pittsburgh, and I talk with other artists and blah, blah. Maybe that's okay, well, why is some 20-year-old kid going to want to hear what I have to say? But a lot of them hit me up to come on the show. So fortunately, I found some way to sort of cross that gap. But I think that, it would be very, very beneficial to maybe have those people, not only having that on the podcast, but also maybe, like you said, maybe I should reach out to a younger kid. Hey, you have any interest in helping me with social media or helping me with video ideas or this and that? What do you think? Even if it's you don't need to actually post this for me, but just kind of being just somebody to bounce ideas off of, and just yo, is this whack? Or is this something that is interesting?
Exactly. And even that, so like what you just said, that proposal is a starting place of humility, because there's plenty of people that wouldn't even be willing to go say to someone younger, hey, things that I don't know, and I need access to some of that info. So, right, you're talking about, humility right there. But the other side of it is even as you kind of told a shorter metaphorical version of your story, one of the thinkers about marketing that I admire the most is a man by the name of Donald Miller. And he always says that, and he's a man that studies narrative down to the academic level, right? And he says, the most important thing that you can be in any story is the guide. You're not Luke Skywalker, you're Yoda, to use an older Star Wars metaphor. And so that's what, but think about how I talked about Piper at the beginning, right? We're going to help you with X. We're going to unlock Y for you. And it's not really about who we are and what we've accomplished and too many details about ourselves. It's, I know that most humans, most of the time, are walking around with jobs to be done. They're looking to, buy a screw gun so that they can put a picture on the wall and hang a photo of a cherished family memory. Okay, maybe I could be that cherished family memory, but I'm probably not their family. So I'm obviously not going to fill that job. But if I could be the screw gun, then they're going to want to keep that screw gun around, because there's going to be more jobs to be done like that in the future. And so in that same sense, even as I think about, you and inevitably I'm assuming that you have a little bit of an audience, you kind of have this distribution channel, and these kids who are hustling to, build their own name as a musical act are saying, okay, one of the jobs to be done here is that distribution that Sykes has accrued to some way, shape, or form. But the next level of that is, let me help you avoid the 10 most common mistakes I've seen music artists make. And maybe that's in Pittsburgh, maybe it's not in Pittsburgh, but here's another solution that I'm bringing to you at the guide level. The guides are always okay. And you can go all the way mega, macro metaphorical to evolution, right? The person that is continually unlocking doors for others, the person that is continually enabling others, nature has a way of keeping those characters around, because that's what makes nature work, right? But all the way down to the micro level, very selfishly, everyone is walking through the world with blinders. They're walking through, listening to their story, living their story. And so your capacity to make it very plain, very simple, very legible. Here's the role I can play in your story, and make that super clear. That's when things get crazy, because it's, we put out so much content over the last 3 years, and like so much of it falls on deaf ears, or is missed, or is not even retained by the people viewing it, let alone the people that it's not even distributed to. We talked about distribution at the beginning. Then there's the people that actually it's distributed and it's not even retained. But what's retained is, man, you really helped me think about something differently. Man, you really opened my eyes to X when I was otherwise not aware of it. And that's the legacy you're ever going to leave with someone. I'm sure your favorite acts, the legacy that they'll leave within your mind is, they made me feel something. They elevated my understanding of what a live show could be, what a great record could be. And, that's what you're trying to deliver in whatever form, whatever type of media you choose. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I think that it's so easy. I mean, it took me a long time just as a creator, to understand how music is a conversation between yourself and the audience, and to stop creating art from such a selfish perspective, and like creating art that has a purpose for other people. I mean, there are some people that do enjoy just selfish art. I think a lot of modern art, to bring up MoMA again, a lot of that stuff is like unapologetically selfish, and there's definitely a market for it. But I think, I'm more of a music guy. So I find that, having a conversation with somebody through a story that you're telling in a song format is the best way to resonate with somebody else. And the other thing too, with, my podcast over time, I remember just having a really hard time trying to figure out like, what is the purpose of the podcast, and like forgetting, like that it is like my show. And this was actually, somebody told me this one time, where they were just like, I don't even know why they said this to me, but what they had said was, hey, I really like the show. Don't ever forget that like the show's about you. And like, it's cool that you have guests on and things like that, but people listen to the show for you. So don't get too caught up in like who you have or who you don't have on the show. And I was like, oh, I guess you're right. I guess it is about like me. And I guess maybe it's because I always try to avoid bringing up things that are too personal on the show, or just like being like a guide for the guests that come on. But also it's like, well, why are people going to come by every week if it's just like me and then a random person? If there isn't like some sort of a defined, steady sort of thing that's a constant throughout every episode. And I guess that needs to be me and my ding dong personality. It's just really easy sometimes, 'cause I don't want to like step on people's toes, or like a guest, or interrupt people and, make it all about me. I already feel like I have too much going on. I have a podcast and these bands, and I'm doing all this stuff. It's just like, I don't want this to be about me. Everything else that I do is about me. But then I don't have a story. Then I'm not telling a story.
Yeah, but there's different definitions of it being about you. Like some of the best interviews that I've ever listened to, which were just masterful works, whether it was, by Oprah, or there's actually some people that I guess don't necessarily need to be mentioned, but like they recede into the background, and what they did so well was create the space.
Yeah.
Like it's sometimes like, man, they just created the space for that moment to happen. And I don't know if most other people would, whether that's instinct, whether that's empathy, whether that's their ear. It's not always, Howard Stern, another one. Like sometimes it'll be the shortest little quip, shortest little question, but it'll set off the cascade of the next great answer that he got from his guest. So there's an art to, having presence in your show without necessarily dominating the airwaves.
Yeah, I think that, I try to be very like mindful in the sense of I don't know everything, and there's always room for me to learn and grow, right? I think that's a healthy place to be in. But sometimes it can get a little, maybe somewhat toxic for me, because I'm so convinced that I don't know anything that I always think I'm doing everything wrong. But that's probably not the case. There's probably a lot of things I'm doing totally fine. And I just need to relax and not overthink what I'm doing. I think it's really easy to overthink things and get let the overthinking turn into like an option paralysis, and then nothing gets done. Especially for me in terms of like marketing, just to like pivot back to that. I'm the type of person, it's like I've spent my whole life just like getting decent at making songs and putting them out and doing art. You know what I mean? Like that's what I do. But in terms of marketing, like I didn't spend a whole lot of time with that at all. And then one day I realized, I was like, oh crap, like if I'm going to be like, I need to have somebody to share my art with, right? Like how do I tell people about it? And I don't know, where did you like, what was your sort of epiphany, if there was one, about like understanding digital marketing or marketing in general, and deciding that like this was something that you wanted to dedicate, a huge chunk of your life and career to? Like what made the light bulb click where you were like, oh, this is something that I'm good at? Because I've never once had that thought in my life.
Yeah. Well, I'll be the first. Actually, I don't even have to be the first. My fiance would be the first to tell you that I'm not even that good of like a photographer, despite the fact that we're selling these types of creative services that usually involve a camera. So I'm in a similar boat where I'm more aware of the things that I'm not that good at than the things that I am. But the arc, I'll try to say it relatively shortly, but it does all connect. I was going to the University of Pittsburgh, taking political, like science type of classes. And it was just utterly apparent, a little bit of political science, a little bit of history, that like, man, every decision was an economic decision. Like we like to call it like politics, but it's really like, man, we don't have enough. So we got to do something severe. So war. That's a gross oversimplification, but that's like a lot of history is basically that. And so from there, got really into economics. And then they have some of these theories in economics that are kind of wild, where it's like, people are perfectly rational economic actors. That's what our model says. And you just spend any time with people, and it's just like, the people aren't rational. They're not really like, hyper calculating within every step of their decisions, which takes you into a field of behavioral economics, of how people actually end up making some form of a decision. And so there was that study side in conjunction with coming out of school, not really knowing what I was doing, having a degree where, between people at the Career Resource Center and other characters like that, like you can go be in financial services, or you can go to this grad school or that grad school. And I was like, man, that's a pretty sparse menu of options. And starting my podcast basically as a way to try to figure out, I can tell that there are some people that don't hate what they do, that don't loathe every minute of their working day. What's up with them? Like if I get proximate to them, I'm going to potentially be able to figure out what's going on here. And so I started the podcast. I was, to quickly summarize, financial services are highly regulated, for usually for good reason. And as soon as it was uncovered that I was potentially even doing something like this, that was a stern talking to, which led to my near immediate resignation. And basically from that point forward, I had been in these kind of like financial services, selling financial products, sales of a software company, and just seeing how brutally hard it was to be on the other end of that smile and dial process, right? So I'm sending out cold emails, I'm making cold calls. I am trying to basically, to use a simple sports metaphor, I'm trying to start at home place and get all the way around the bases. It's like, damn, there has to be a more effective way to get around the bases. And what it actually is starting on second base. So with our clients, Piper has been built into a 6-figure agency annual revenue in less than 3 years, which is pretty solid for a company our age, particularly by 2 first-time founders.
Yeah.
And the magic of it, I try to convey this when I speak with other entrepreneurs who are trying to figure out something similar, is almost 100% of the business that Piper has done has come via inbound leads. Basic term, outbound leads are you're smiling and dialing, you're cold calling, you are sending outbound messages, like, casting a net, basically, or casting a fishing rod and try to pull something in repeatedly, versus inbound, where they email you, they call you, they reach out to you and say, I have this problem, can you help? So back to what I said before, that legibility of how can I help you? We've focused as a company on these different platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, so on and so forth, making it highly legible, easy to understand how we can help, what we do, the services provide, what we are capable of. And then to say that we wait makes it seem like we are much less active than we actually are, but we are just in a perpetual state of finding novel ways to entertain, inform an audience, and remind them of that answer to what we do, and then bring in a hopefully qualified lead, someone with an actual budget to compensate us for those type of services. But that is what we've done. And to be candid, it's a piecemeal thing. There was no light bulb. There was no perfect switch of like, hey, Arron, you're good at this, and this is the path before you. No doubts. Like the first year of the business, I was such a atrociously bad entrepreneur. At one point, Sykes, we had $25,000 in outstanding invoices past due, meaning we had sent people bills for work we had done and it was not paid. And that was my incompetence as an entrepreneur, not getting sales agreements, not having a structure to the deals that we were making where someone was paid in advance. We were waiting for completion to pay it all. There were a litany of issues with the approach that we took. And so, that was a very, very brutal lesson that I've had to learn. We don't make that mistake anymore. We make new mistakes now, and hopefully they're less severe and hopefully they're less impactful. But there is an awareness that we're way better than we were. There's an awareness that, like I used that metaphor before of the 25 years in business agencies without 25 YouTube subscribers. I know that we're better than those people. I know that we get this more than they do. But, the challenge of any sort of expertise is you do see the very kind of small list of skills and abilities that you're accruing. But the hard work of accruing those and being aware of them comes with a coinciding, faster expanding list of the things that you don't yet know, that you probably should know, that you need to know sometime soon, or you need to find someone and get them on your team, and they either need to know it or they figure it out because there's just too many problems to solve.
Yeah. I have found, me personally, that I try to now look at any time something comes up where like, oh, I'm a ding dong. I messed up. I made a mistake. It's like, well, this is opportunity for growth. And now I understand, trying to learn like why something went wrong, if it was my fault or somebody else's fault, what it was, figure out the nuts and bolts of what the problem was. That way we can move forward. And then, with all of this like marketing stuff, and if I don't understand how it works now, it's like, well, I can try to learn and try to work on these things. And I think that it's just having a actual desire to want to do something and want to learn, I think will get you really, really far. I think there's a lot of people that just I think that no matter how much money you have, I don't think you can there's been plenty of times where people have thrown countless amounts of dollars at something and it hasn't done anything because there's still no story. There's no simple narrative that you kind of keep talking about, which I think is probably the most crucial thing that anybody can hear. It's just like, well, what are you really offering other people? Like, what is it at the end of the day? Like, does the world need another heavy metal band? No. But the world's always looking for a new heavy metal band at the same time. It's just like, how do you connect those dots? Like, the world doesn't need you, but if you have the right thing, the world will love you. And I think that could be said about anything. The world doesn't need another pizza shop. The world doesn't need another YouTube channel. The world doesn't need another automobile manufacturer. But these are all things that if you do a really good job, like, people will love it and they will gravitate to it.
Well, I think what you're saying is a really good totem to remind people about humility, because there are all the things that you're listing are the things where there's plenty of competition. There's a lot of people trying to get on that stage. There's a lot of pizza joints opening. There's a lot of people that have been told that they're the prettiest, and so they're going to go move to LA and become a big star, whatever. Like, there's these highly competitive fields, and then there's the people that, clean porta-johns, and you don't got to be that good at cleaning porta-johns to make some money, because there's just not the same type of competition to be there. So really these marketing challenges are more severe when you're in these fields with more competition and a higher degree of replaceability for your skill set. Your band can't do it. Okay, we're going to go find the next band. So in those scenarios, another part of the framework is, and this is from Seth Godin, is people like us do things like this. So I grew up in the North Hills. People in North Hills eat pizza from Monticello's. You'll be hard pressed to find someone in Ross Township that has, a negative opinion of Monticello's, because that's the local pizza joint. I know they have other locations, but we just grew up so close that that's what people did, right? That's a simplistic version, but the truth is that there just isn't 100% distribution for an appetite for a metal band. Even Amazon Prime, which is more popular, more US adults have an Amazon Prime membership than own a gun. More US adults have an Amazon Prime membership than go to church. It is a staggeringly large percentage, and yet it's not 100%. It's never going to be 100%. That sounds like a totalitarian nightmare that I expect us to avoid. However, they know exactly who they are serving. They position the entire service around that value add, and then continue to bring an explosion. I just disappeared here. Is that me?
Boom. We're back.
Boom. I'm back. But it's the same thing of people like us do things like this. Entrepreneurs, small businesses, medium-sized businesses that are trying to have a more effective presence on a YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, and grow their business, work with Piper. It's a very simple framing, excludes a ton of people. There's a ton of people that don't fall into that category, but that's okay. We're going to be all right. In the same sense, maybe it's the specificity of the show. Maybe it's the message of the music. Maybe it is the experience that it unlocks. It's overly simple, but people that like to smile at a metal show, come see us. Sure. You need to have that specificity. And if you find the right form of specificity, there is going to be a market for it if you've put in the work to execute.
Yeah, I think that is it's simultaneously the simplest and the most complicated thing about being an artist, is really finding your audience and finding who are you gonna market this thing to? It's if you have, a very specific style of music that you're doing, you have to find those people that like what you're doing. But something really interesting that's happened with me that I have found is that your audience isn't always where you think it's going to be. Outside of my metal stuff, I have a background in hip hop and things like that. And I always thought that my hip hop crowd would be one certain demographic of people, other people that like weirdo, underground, experimental hip hop. I was wrong. I was way wrong. I found much more of an audience in people that liked rock music and other types of things there. And the underground people never really grasped onto my stuff, even though that's where all my inspiration came from. I felt like that was that's what I was contributing to, but it wasn't there. It's maybe in a different way. You have speaking of pizza joints, right? You have Spack Brothers over in Garfield. It's okay, it's a pizza shop, but a large chunk of their demographic is vegans and vegetarians that go there because they specialize in like, they do like the seitan sandwiches and all that stuff. And they're really good at it. And they've been doing it for a long time. So it's like, okay, I thought we were a pizza shop, but we still are a pizza shop, but we found this whole new realm of a customer base and appreciation from something that really has nothing to do with the pizza. Like I found I found a fan base in something that really had nothing to do with rap. And I think that there's just again, looking outside of the typical places. It could be, I mean, it seems like maybe risky or maybe a little bit scary to like take those chances. But if you don't take those chances, then how can you really grow? I mean, there's millions and millions and millions of people in the world, but they all like different things for different reasons. There's some people that I know that like don't like heavy metal bands particular, to keep on that topic, but they will like go see this one band live because they like watching the drummer. Like, oh, the band is a crazy drummer and they're a lot of fun live. Or like, like I don't really like pizza places all this much, but this place has like a brick oven and that's okay. So I like that kind of stuff. Or I like Sicilian, like, if you can have that different thing, you could still bring people in from unexpected places.
And the starting point is run it as a smaller experiment, right? So those young 19-year-old, early 20-year-old kids, they can throw some stuff at the wall. And if it doesn't stick, it's like, okay, on to the next one. When someone puts millions of dollars into a new development on the Strip, they better know that people are coming to rent that out, to spend their money there, because that's a sizable upfront investment.
Yeah.
And as long as, I think digital media is a perfect outlet for this. As long as you have the outlet for the very low stakes experiments, and mentally you're in a place where we're throwing stuff against the wall. People don't like it. We'll be back at it again tomorrow. We'll be back at it again next week. Then you have the ability to at least potentially get the data for what that thing is. And then it coincides with, are you open? You have a very good friend. He says, the primary objective in a man's life is to become more open. Your ideal state is to live in perpetual, complete openness. And that's very metaphorical. It's hard to kind of grasp onto. I still struggle with exactly what that means. But I dig that idea that, the folks that kind of see the next wave that they're going to catch, the folks that, can have the confidence to place that really big bet, I've spent a lot of time being open, taking in, and running those experiments so that when that's another big moment, right? When are you actually going to go pot committed? When are you actually going to push all the chips in on something and have confidence that it can work? And that's, we'll see if that plays out accurately for me, but that is definitely the pattern that I hope more folks can take advantage of.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to get into this without, talking for another hour, because I'm about to open up a can of worms, but quickly, I'm curious because, what are your personal thoughts, in terms of the sort of what we'll call DIY marketing that social media platforms have introduced to business owners and creators, like a Facebook business suite, or boosting posts on Instagram, etc. What are your thoughts as somebody that does this from like a more what would that be? You're in a much bigger headspace in terms of how these things work outside of social media platforms. But, for me, it's really easy to be like, oh, my band put out this new song and it's on here. I put the YouTube link on Facebook and they're like, give us $10 and we'll show it to 3 people. And you're like, okay, what is this? Is this like totally bullshit, or is this more just like, you got to understand how it works?
You have to understand how it works. And I always bring it down. So at its core, like the way to understand me, if people haven't, they probably already come to their own conclusions, but the way to understand me is as a business nerd. I just think the way business works is fascinating, and the way in which bad actors can continue until they can't, and the way certain people just continue to ring up success after success after success. and the business models that underpin that. How do they set themselves up to succeed? And so I always talk about these social platforms as a pure supply and demand curve, back to my economics background, right? So if you can remember, when I'm trying to think of when I even got on Facebook. Maybe I was like a senior in high school or something like that, probably a little bit before that. But you would see every single post of your friends, and you probably spend a lot of time on your friends' profiles because there just wasn't that much content. There wasn't that much supply for the attention that you were bringing to the platform. So you saw more or less it all. Every time someone changed their relationship status, oh my gosh, can you believe that, so-and-so ended things with so-and-so? And slowly but surely, more and more posting happened. And Facebook said, okay, let's port posting from personal pages over to company pages. And then those company pages saw their organic reach decline until it reached that point, exactly like you're saying, where, hey buddy, you want this scene, you're going to have to pay up. And Instagram has basically gone through a similar nexus here over the last 4 years or so, where it went from explosive organic growth all over the place and the slow decline into less and less organic reach to get in front of people's eyeballs. As a company, since we founded, Piper has seen enormous growth, a ton of those inbound leads via LinkedIn, because in 2018, LinkedIn introduced content being uploaded to the feed and the eventual ability to put videos and photos and these decks. And we got a ton of leads from that because a lot of companies weren't comfortable publishing content there. They didn't take it seriously as a platform, all sorts of reasons. And so we benefited from that. So the kind of core answer there to, should I be a user-generated content producer on one of these platforms, I would say that the ship has sailed for Facebook. There aren't acts breaking on Facebook anymore. There are highly capitalized startups acquiring customers via Facebook ads, but that is usually after they have proven product market fit. Maybe they've run some experiments there with like a little budget, but that's basically where they started. Conversely, I have another friend who I believe they just raised a Series A. They are a men's cosmetics brand, and they have acquired a majority of their business and brand equity through free posting on TikTok, organic posts, not paid for distribution, just the sweat, the hard work, the discipline of posting there consistently, and have cultivated an audience of people who are interested in a kind of subtle, refined, thoughtfully designed men cosmetics suite of products. And so it is the kind of moving target of, once again, the supply and demand. There's a ton of demand. There's a ton of eyeballs looking for content on TikTok, opening the app with consistency, spending dozens of minutes on the app. And so there is this demand for content and a supply that is increasing rapidly. And TikTok is increasing their ad load. Even over the last couple of months, they've increased their ad load, which once again is kind of a proxy for that organic reach tanking. But it's still in the early stages. If you had gotten really freaking serious about Instagram 4 years ago, you'd be in a better spot now, because that's where things were. I'd say TikTok is somewhere in that range. Maybe a little before that, maybe a little after that. It's hard to be sure, but I think that you have to, if you don't have any money, if you're rubbing two nickels together and you're trying to get something started through sweat equity, through grit, you got to take a platform like that seriously. I think you can be taking LinkedIn seriously. I think that just, like Six, you do a good job with your production. You have good gear, you have that type of stuff. If you were telling me about the business of heavy metal or the business of music with a weekly LinkedIn piece of content, I would consume that. I'd be fascinated by that. And I'm sure I'm not alone. And so you got to play the game from that supply and demand standpoint. Understand that these businesses live on attention. They sell ads against the attention that they accrue. And so they need great content, and they will elevate great content. It's an extreme example. And I understand why someone call them a sellout, but you got these TikTok stars, Charlie D'Amelio, Addison Rae, Josh Richards that have literally gone from teenage nobodies to international celebrities and multi-million-dollar brands for free content, free distribution. I'm not saying you need to dress in a tight outfit and dance, because those are just the extreme examples that I think have the highest chance of someone being familiar with. But there are enormous businesses. Peter's Pasta here in Pittsburgh. He's left his job as a chef to be a full-time content creator around pasta creation with more than I think it's over 1 million followers on TikTok. There's Cold Cuts, another local kid here who I believe is also 1 million followers on TikTok, doing different kind of pratfall type of stunts and physical stunts and dunking the basketball.
Yeah.
And so, this stuff is very, very possible for the talented. Like it's not a handout. It's not free, but it is.
So I think that is the biggest thing, which also probably loops back to this common thread of humility that we've discussed time and time again over this conversation. I think that you can understand how all of this works, but if you have shitty product, it doesn't matter. So there's like such it's so easy to get caught up as an artist or as a pizza shop or whatever, okay, nobody's paying attention to what I'm doing because my reach sucks. That's good, but you need to make sure that you're still focusing on making good content. So, maybe you do knock something out the park. Like you have, the right image that catches enough people's attention with the right hashtags, or at the right time, the right person sees it, share, whatever. But if it's crap, it's not going to have that, the retention or a repeat customer that you had also mentioned before. So it's you can maybe find a way to break the cycle now and then. Cause it'll happen with me where I'll have a post that's oh, this didn't get too many likes. This one didn't get too many likes. Then I have one that has 800 to 800% more likes than something that would normally out of nowhere. And I'm what was it about this post? Was it the time that I posted it? There's nothing that's really unique. Is it the cover image that's on it? Is that what got more people to look at it? How did this one work when it's very much in line with everything else that I've done? And trying to figure that out is always really interesting to me. It's well, maybe is this post just good? Is this one, is there something that's fundamentally better about this particular thing than the other things? I don't know. I can't step outside of outside of myself enough to analyze it from the outsider perspective to tell why particular posts do better than others.
And it's so hard because literally I have an editor on my team. He edits the weekly business news show that we do, the Piper Rundown. And we were just talking about the intros because, YouTube, for example, there's only 2 metrics that matter on YouTube. If anyone's trying to build on YouTube, it is your click-through rate and your viewer retention. Everything else doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter when you post. Doesn't really matter if you say the word baloney in the first 3 sentences or whatever the thing is. It is those 2 things. Right.
Yeah.
And we were talking about that video retention and how there's these other channels that do better than us that have longer intros to create these open loops to get someone to the 5th, 7th, 8th minute of the video because they've kind of set you up to be expecting what's coming. Just a good movie does foreshadowing, right? It has that teaser at the beginning. So we had this very simple epiphany of let's make this a 2-sentence intro instead of a 1-sentence intro. And what do you know? It had a positive impact on our view duration. But it's oh, how are we so dense to not get that for 2 freaking years of doing this? Mm-hmm. And so the core, once again, is the humility to say it's not good enough. The reason it's not bigger, the reason we don't have better view duration is us. It's not the viewers. It's not them. They want to find the next great thing. I don't know. What's your favorite TV show you've watched recently?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah.
A Discovery of Witches. It's on Shudder.
Were you gassed when you found that? When you realized that you would come across your next new favorite show?
Totally.
That is generally the approach that people are taking. Whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast, whether it's whatever. People aren't default screw everything 100% of the time, particularly screw your personal content, whoever's listening to this. People are very excited to potentially come across their next new favorite thing. And, like I think about like, certain people be like, oh, like I'm just watching Sopranos for the first time or something. And you're like, oh man, I know what's coming. I know like what's coming in season, whatever. And you had that like feeling like, oh, the first time, right? That could be you, but you have to do the work of recognizing you're not there yet. And that's what I'm doing. That's what I encourage everyone to do. And candidly, that's what the best people have done. Like Quentin Tarantino was not satisfied with his performance in the first movie he ever made. He kept studying the craft, watching, I don't know how many movies that dude has watched or how many movies Tom Cruise has watched in order to become iconic figures in the world of cinema. But they've taken in so much in order to be able to have the fantastic output that they do. I have a very good friend. His name's Alan Gannett. He wrote a book called The Creative Curve. And he interviewed all sorts of fantastic creatives, every domain, right? Poets, the head of content, Ted Sarandos for Netflix, musicians, everyone. And the number one thing that is also backed up by like hardcore academic research is you have to take in a lot of good stuff in the domain that you're trying to be great at and really, really study what it is that makes them good. And then if you can be clear-eyed in comparison to where you are, it'll give you some breadcrumbs on the path forward. Like we started off doing basically like with our business show, we started doing this, like the idea was a blending of the Barstool Rundown and like Bloomberg. So Bloomberg is this like hardcore, like financial business news show where everyone's like in a tie and they're all candidly like talking shit. They're just like speaking bullshit, pardon me.
Yeah.
And Barstool is this like very kind of casual, literally like they're on a bar stool type of position, just shooting the shit about sports, like kind of talking about it like a common person. And we're trying to blend those two. We're trying to talk about business like a common person because we just didn't see that anywhere. And the first episodes sucked royally in every single sense. We didn't even have an opening teaser intro. We didn't have really tight explanations of the stories we wanted to cover. The graphics were garbage. Like I can go on and on and on, but it was just a little piecemeal, strip it away. And what do you know, 200 episodes later, we have, comments where people were saying this was the best explanation of the, Greensill Bank fraud story that I've come across. This is the, most valuable explanation that I've seen of the forthcoming whoever IPO. And it's a lot of hard work. It's not sexy, and I'm not trying to make myself sound cooler than I am by going through this, but it's just candor about what it takes. Like what I wish I had, if we can put ourselves back in the shoes of that, 19, 20, 21-year-old aspiring hip hop star that might come through, or anyone that's listening to this. It's like, it's so much more work than you expect it to be. Why it wouldn't be worth it if it wasn't?
Yeah. I think that, it's very interesting to see, because I've had so many conversations with so many different artists from all different genres and walks of life. And like, there's so many common threads where it's always like, what do I do next? Like, what is the next, like, how do I, it's like literally like equivalent to like, what is the meaning of life? Like, how do I get through this ceiling? And it seems like it's so easy to like, you get into these rabbit hole conversations about algorithms and YouTube analytics and Facebook boosts and all of these things that I think they do help. But it's, I already said it earlier. It's like, okay, is the content good? Are you telling, a story that's easy to tell? Is this something that has a clear focus that is being marketed to, a specific demographic of people, but is simple enough that people from outside that demographic can latch on and want to be a part of it too? Like I don't know. It's very, it seems like it's all so much more simple than my brain wants it to be.
Yeah. I mean, I use this refrain all the time. it's simple, but it ain't easy.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff is simple, right? Like if you want to get in shape, everyone knows, got to go for more runs, eat more vegetables. It's simple. It ain't easy. I love Oreos. Like I love Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? Like it's not easy, but it's simple and it's across the board. And it's so easy, I think, to get spun up in whatever personal narrative you have about why it's not the simple thing. Like it's very seductive to come up with the complex whatever when it's probably simpler than that. There's the Occam's razor idea. It's usually the simplest explanation is the right one. Not always, but usually the simplest explanation is the right answer. And I just kind of default to that. Hopefully that gives me more energy to pour into the work, to pour into the content, to pour into that side of it. I ride with the simple answers most of the time. And I want to add one other basic thing that I just forgot to mention, because you're asking about like the arc of getting into digital media or realizing it was good. And I just want to put this note in there too. It's highly biological. What I mean by that is it's very easy to look at your phone or to talk about it as digital and, the new blah, 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 blah. It's humans at the other side of that screen watching your YouTube video. If you're in someone's earbuds listening to your music and they're listening to your music through Spotify or whatever, and it's digital, blah, blah, blah. They're humans. They have human responses. They have the same general, menu of emotions. There's a pretty well-defined range of what their intellectual horsepower is. There's exceptions. There are, those crazy 3 derivative tails in these cases, but more often than not, these are humans and they operate very similarly. They have the different nuances, cultures, backgrounds, tastes, of course, but, a proxy for trust is how many times have you been around me and not hurt me? That seems like weirdly simple, but that's basically how our brains were hardwired to engender trust in primitive cultures. Back when it was, the tribe of 140 people, out in the woods somewhere, you knew every single one of those faces in that tribe. And if a new face showed up, you were skeptical, default skepticism, because that kept you alive. But if that person showed up and all your buddies kind of accepted them and they didn't hurt anyone, maybe not day 2, maybe not day 3, but after some certain point in time, you came to feel comfortable with them. So in that same sense, not that trust is necessarily the kind of, trust is still the core presupposition of someone wanting to come to your show. They're trusting you that you're going to give them a good time. They're trusting you that you're going to bring the noise and, come with an entertainment value to which they've become accustomed. Yeah. But, that's consistency. So in the digital marketing sense, I think of it all as that. In the same way, like I'll tell our photographer, I'll tell the person editing the video, bring it closer to my face, because anyone whose face you've seen this closely, you trust a little bit more. Unless I'm like really like shifty with like beady eyes and looking all over the place. If you've looked at my face for an hour, you will trust me more in the future. Now I'm going to take that trust very seriously. I'm not going to turn that into everyone being in my like ornate pyramid scheme. That's at least that's the plan. But those are basic proxies for biological functions. We're still trying to biologically get people to rally around our cause in a tribe. We're a much bigger, global, digitally connected tribe, but we're biological beings at the end of the day. And if you can understand that, you can understand why, certain pop acts all look very similar, because they're hacking the same basic biological instincts that we have as human beings. And it's gross. It's not, comfortable to say, but that's how the world works.
Sure. No, that's a very, very intelligent and thoughtful way to look at things. And I think that I've thought that before in the past as well, but I don't know if I've ever been able to like verbally articulate it out loud into words that made sense to another human being. So congratulations on that. I think that, we are human, and it's, I guess it's like that whole dumb conversation where people will have oh, like, why is so and so popular, and why is this and this that? It's like, look at it. I mean, you understand, like, it doesn't take much to understand why, like, some of like these, people like on TikTok are getting popular for dancing, right? It's like, well, it's like, what does a lot of culture value, like, youth and beauty and, dancing around and being all fun, charisma will get you a long way too. So if you're like young and attractive and very charismatic and just entertaining to watch, no wonder that like people can blow up on TikTok. If you have all of those things, it's like a cocktail for success, especially when people are going on TikTok most of the time just to kind of like tune out the outside world. They're just looking for like a visual snack. So if you can be that like visual snack, then of course it's going to lead to success.
But, I talked about Peter's Pastas. This is a Pittsburgh guy, 1 million followers. He makes pasta on TikTok. And I hope we won't be hurt by me saying this, but people aren't there because he's just like some Adonis. He's a good looking dude, but that's people are there because he can put together novelty, entertainment, and information.
Oh yeah.
It's entertaining to just, the way he presents it, the way he cuts it, the way he edits those videos together. It's novel in the sense that I didn't really know how pasta was made before he showed me. And he was like, carving these things off. And then it's also informational. It's also informational because I'm learning it in something I never otherwise would have. So there's another biological necessity. We have these biological necessities. Like, I don't have enough info. I don't have enough yet. No one is actually like, I don't care about anything whatsoever and never learning again. That's someone who is, knocking on a real risky door.
Do you remember like those old segments in like the Mr. Rogers episodes where they would show how different shit got made?
Yeah.
I remember there was one when they showed how crayons get made. And that was like the shit, dude. It was so cool. And like, it's like, I think that like a lot of people have like probably some sort of an attachment to things like that, where like it's being presented in a way, because that show was made for kids, right? So it's being presented in a very simple way. And it's like something that's like a common everyday thing, whether it's the crayons or something else that was on the show, and you're presenting it in a way where people were like, oh, I know what that is. And I think most human beings have like a biologically programmed sense of curiosity. So if you can tap into
survival mechanism.
Yeah, if you tap into that, you could definitely keep people's attention for at least a minute or so. But then it's like, it gets kind of weird too. It gets weird whenever you tap into like, well, what is it you're trying to put out there? And like, for me, it's like, I don't have a TikTok account. I haven't made one. I don't really have any plan to. I see the value in it, but for like what I do, it's like what I actually want to create like artistically, can I actually translate that to TikTok in a way that's appropriate for the platform? Or am I just going to like be creating content that isn't really what people on that platform want to engage with, content that I really don't want to make in the first place? So then there's like bad juju around the concept of it for me that I don't think would be very beneficial. I got to be in like a better mindset. Like if I don't want to do something and I do it anyways, I feel like that's going to come out in the end product.
I totally agree. And I think that, the beauty of being entrepreneurial in any domain is you do ultimately get to choose to do what you want to do. Now, if you're overly self-serving to infinity, then you're not serving anyone else through that aim. But it's all the mindset of what you're bringing to the platform. If you're bringing there saying, I'm going to teach you kids a thing or two about heavy metal, and I'm going to make you appreciate it because you probably I use the sports analogy more than music just because that's where I'm more comfortable. But I always say that the folks that don't like a sport usually have not played it or tried to play it. Some stuff is so obviously crazy, like, luge, where they're just like riding down a hill. And you've kind of done that anyways, because you've like gone sledding or something.
Yeah.
But it's so obviously absurd that it's like captivating. But if you've tried to do a sport, it makes your appreciation for the master of that thing greater. And I'd argue in the same sense, someone who is a master of something, whether it be history or a musical genre, are so excited about it that they can usually articulate something of what makes it great. So the flip side would be if you said, I hear a lot of you TikTokers are listening to hip hop, which I like, pop music, which I like, but you're not really into heavy metal. Let me explain why you should be.
Sure.
What I've just done is create this open loop in the intro of the little clip that would potentially, not 100% of people, but some percent of people are like, okay, I'll give this a shot. Pitch me on, heavy metal. And then however you would go about doing that, whatever you think is like the act to consume or the piece of art, and maybe it's too short. I am empathetic to all those arguments, but yeah, it's all about the mentality that what am I here to do? People like us do things like what are those people here? Am I trying to tell them that we're up to something?
So there's three things. One is, I think the sports analogy can relate to music, because I think there's a thing where it's like, say I don't understand how like the nuance of football or hockey and like watching hockey and what the plays are, what makes something a good or a bad decision. I don't understand, but I can watch maybe like skiing or like snow, like some extreme sports. It's like something simple. And I think the equivalent is like watching somebody play guitar versus watching somebody play drums. I feel like if you have no understanding of how the drums are played, you see somebody playing and you see the instant reaction to them. And like, you could probably easily watch a drum playthrough. So you're like, oh, I see what's happening. But you watch somebody playing guitar and you see it, but you don't understand the nuance of what each of the chords and the notes are. Right. So there's that. Two, I think that something that I'm very aware of and paranoid about is being like these old 25-year-old marketing companies that you mentioned of that have like this shit presence on YouTube because they've ignored all of these things that are obvious, that are right there because they just have a very dumb understanding of what it is. Like me automatically assuming that TikTok isn't for me is probably me being that 25-year-old company. Like maybe I should just shut up and try it out and see what happens. Because what's the worst case scenario? What am I going to do? Either not have a TikTok account and create content on there, or am I just going to keep posting stuff on Facebook? Like, okay, like what's more of a waste of my time right now? I feel like if I ask 20 people like, hey, should I be posting on Facebook or TikTok? Most of them are probably going to be like TikTok. So why am I still posting on Facebook?
And it would be fascinating data who said Facebook and who said TikTok and who you're actually trying to reach. Because I think if you actually spoke to those 20 people and you saw like the 4 people that were like, Facebook, yeah. And the other people, I don't even know if that's the metaphor, but I think that's
it's
compelling.
It's interesting. I think that I don't think this was your intention by any means, but just this conversation has made me feel a lot more like I should just fucking download it and try it. Why not? Why not? I think that my agenda just needs to be like, so I think I've always overcomplicated it because it's like, would it be podcast focused? Would it be focused on the band? Blah, 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 blah. It's like, it seems like, well, all the people really give a fuck about on TikTok is personalities. So it just has to be me. And I need to find a way to just be myself and like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe my song is in the background, or maybe this has something to do, it's tied into a podcast, but it just needs to be like me and not promoting anything, but in a way creating brand awareness through just me being me. Seems simple.
Yeah.
It seems simple, but
it is
it's
simple.
scary too.
Well, I mean, I think one of your advantages that you would have is you're funny. Like you have some personality in conjunction with the expertise. And if you think about like a standard joke, there's a build up, a punchline. It's this, accelerating tension and release of tension, right? Mm-hmm. And if your TikTok's constrained to a minute, I don't know if you consumed a lot of Vine back in the day, but like it's very much about these condensed narratives, these condensed jokes, these very simple ideas. And that's hard to do for people. It's hard to convey a lot in a short period of time. And you've had the reps through all this other content that you've done. Like when we started, what I said to our team was, I'm watching kids shooting video on some busted ass old iPhone doing well. We have a camera. We have a real mic. We're purportedly decent storytellers. Mm-hmm. If you guys can't figure this out, we aren't as good as we think we are.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's the starting point there. And like, I don't have the answer. You're not going to have the answer. You're not going to have the answer after doing your first 2 posts on TikTok as to whether it's podcast or mute, like whatever the thing will be. But, maybe this will be the thing we wrap up on, because I do have a call that I have to hop on.
Oh, yeah,
shortly,
totally, dude.
We have a framework called the 4 C's. And the 4 C's are consume, comment, curate, and then create. And whenever, candidly, I'm usually telling this to older Gen Xers or like boomers trying to get comfortable on LinkedIn, but it's the same framework for any platform. You start by consuming. You got to spend time there, taking stuff in, deciding what you like, what you don't like. Why don't you like it? Why do I like this? Why is this working? Then thoughtfully commenting on the stuff you like to add your 2 cents, because that's like the entree into actually creating on a platform like that, and curating. So if you like something, with TikTok, it's a very easy share feature, but if you've got a partner in your life, a friend, if you're sending them your favorite stuff and they're like, yeah, that was good in some way, shape, or form, now you're getting a better barometer for what quality is. And then you can move on to creation. For someone like you who creates as much as you just, like, I don't even necessarily know if that may be too rudimentary, but for the like average person out there, if they are trying to figure out what the entree is into some form of creative work, to me, that's the playbook. You end up creating once you are already a thoughtful consumer and curator of quality.
Yeah. Hell yeah. That makes sense to me. Totally. And I think that's probably something that I've already been doing, but I've just never said it out loud again. You're good at putting your words out there, out of your mouth hole into the atmosphere. I'm not so good at that. It's everything just kind of gets static up here, and then it just comes out like the.
Yeah, it's my only job. It's Hannah's job to make me look good, and hopefully I can make it sound good.
Well, shit, dude. Arron, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today. I just looked over at the time and I was like, wow, we went for quite a hoot and while, but this is stuff that I'm genuinely interested in. I very rarely get to have conversations like this. So I appreciate you taking the time, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to hopefully have even more conversation again in the future. And if anyone has watched all the way to the end and has more thoughts, questions, anything, happy to, start a conversation. I'm on all the platforms, relatively easy to find, and happy to continue the conversation in any way, shape, or form.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to do my outro and I'm going to let you get going on with the rest of your busy professional day.
All right. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Cool, man. And that is all, folks. Thanks so much for being here. One more time. Arron Watson. Yeah. I'll be back again next week with another episode. Same time, same place, same channel. You know the drill. My name is Sykes. Start the Beat 2021. Woo, woo. Thanks for listening. And we are done, my friend. That is a podcast. Just going to fade this out. And that's it. We did it. Thank you.
Good stuff, dude.